It was one of those cool autumn nights that felt like the season had finally settled in. The air had a bite to it, and the sky was that deep, inky blue that you only get this time of year. We had just finished watching the big game at our high school. The stands were still packed, but most of the kids were gone now, heading off to some house party or whatever. Not us. Me, Jake, Sam and Tyler decided to hang out on the empty football pitch after everyone had cleared out. The floodlights lit up the field, casting these long shadows behind us as we tossed around the ball. We had no plans, just 4 bored guys trying to avoid going home to deal with parents. I should have known something felt off when Sam kept looking back towards the parking lot, but I shrugged it off. "Dude, relax," Jake said, catching the ball and spinning it on his finger. "Ain't nobody left?" Sam shrugged. "I don't know, man. I thought I saw a car pull in." Tyler laughed, smacking Sam on the back. "You scared of a couple headlights?" We all chuckled, but I noticed it too. Off near the edge of the lot, there was a car. A beat-up old sedan. It was just sitting there, engine off. No big deal, right? Except the way that it was parked made it look like it was angled at us, watching. "You're right," I said, pointing. "That car's weird though. Why would it still be here?" Tyler scoffed and threw the ball at me. "Probably waiting for someone to finish cleaning up or something. Who cares?" But Sam wasn't convinced. It wasn't there before, I swear. We started walking towards the edge of the field, heading back to the parking lot where Jake had his truck. That's when we heard the engine roar to life behind us. The car's headlights flicked on, high beams glaring in our direction. We froze. "Bro, they're looking at us," I whispered. Jake turned around slowly. "Alright, let's not freak out. It could be coincidence, right?" Just as he said that, the car revved its engine, jerking forward a little before stopping. My gut twisted. They were messing with us. "Let's just walk back to the truck, no running," Jake said, trying to stay cool. But Tyler was already speeding up, his hands jammed into his pockets. Sam, wide-eyed, followed, his breath picking up pace. The car's engine roared again, and this time, it shot forward a good 30 feet, headlights blazing, tires crunching over the gravel. "Hey!" a voice from inside the car yelled. "Where you boys going? Thought I'd have a little fun." The voice was rough, slurred like the guy was drunk or something. We all looked at each other, panic setting in now. "Just ignore them, man," Jake muttered under his breath. "Keep walking." But the car sped up again, now closing the gap between us and them. They were right behind us. The windows were down, and I caught a glimpse of the guy in the passenger's seat. Bald, pale skin, and these sunken eyes that locked onto me. There was another guy in the driver's seat as well, grinning like a maniac. He had a lit cigarette hanging out of his mouth, blowing smoke in our direction as the car crept closer. "Yo, you kids scared?" the bald guy called out, laughing. Jake broke. "Run!" We bolted. We cut across the field, not even looking back. The car peeled out, tires screeching as it followed, the engine roaring louder than it had any right to. I heard the car's doors open for a second, like they were about to get out, but then they just gunned it again, right towards us. "What the hell, man?" Sam screamed, his voice cracking. I could feel the panic clawing at my chest, my legs burning as we sprinted. We weren't fast enough. There was no way we could outrun a car, and we all knew it. Tyler, always the fastest, made it to the trees at the end of the field first. He dove behind one, panting and yelling for us to follow. I was right behind him, but I glanced back. Jake and Sam were still running, but the car was swerving now, cutting them off, the headlights blinding them. The bald guy leaned out of the window, something glinting in his hand. A bat. "Run faster, boys!" he yelled, laughing again. I don't know how, but Jake managed to dive out of the way just before the car reached him. Sam wasn't so lucky. The car clipped him, knocking him to the ground. He let out this horrible scream as he rolled onto the grass, clutching his leg.
No, Sam!
I shouted, running toward him without thinking. The car screeched to a stop, and I saw the door fly open. The bald guy got out, swinging the bat lazily, like he was just warming up.
Looks like we got ourselves a couple of tough guys,
he sneered, walking towards Sam. I froze, my heart pounding so hard it drowned out everything else. Jake ran up, grabbing Sam by the arm and trying to drag him away, but Sam couldn't move fast enough. The bald guy grinned, raising the bat.
Time for a little lesson, huh?
That's when Tyler came out of nowhere, throwing a rock at the guy's head. It hit him square in the forehead, and he stumbled back, cursing loudly.
Go now!
Tyler shouted. Jake and I grabbed Sam and ran, dragging him as fast as we could towards the trees. The bald guy was still shouting, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. We just kept running until the sound of the car finally faded, and we were swallowed by the dark woods. We didn't stop until we made it to the road on the other side. By then, we were all gasping for air, Sam barely able to stand.
What the hell was that, man?
Jake muttered, looking back towards the field.
Who were they?
I didn't have an answer. None of us did. All I knew is that we barely made it out of there, and every time I think about that night, I can still hear the sound of that car engine roaring behind us and those guys laughing like it was all some sick game. I still can't go to fall festivals without feeling that cold pit in my stomach. The one that reminds me of the night that everything almost changed forever. I was 9, and like most kids my age, I loved everything about fall. The cool air, the pumpkins, the smell of cinnamon and bonfires. That year, my mum took me to one of those local fall festivals. You know, the kind with hay rides, caramel apples, and games that no one ever really wins. It started out normal. We had just gotten there, and I remember holding on to my mum's hand while we walked through the stalls. People were everywhere, and the air smelt like fried dough and roasted corn. The sun had just started to dip behind the trees, casting everything in its warm, golden light. Mum was chatting with a vendor about some homemade candles when I noticed a booth nearby that had these giant stuffed animals hanging from the ceiling. They were huge, almost bigger than me, and I couldn't resist.
I'll be right back,
I told her, thinking that it would be a quick detour.
Stay where I can see you,
she said, barely glancing up. But of course, I didn't listen. I darted through the crowd, making a beeline for the stuffed animals. I squeezed between two people, and before I knew it, I was standing in front of the booth, staring up at this massive plush bear. I felt like I was in a different world, surrounded by flashing lights and the noise of people laughing, shouting, music blaring from the speakers. When I turned back around, Mum wasn't there. I couldn't even see her anymore. I called out, but the sound of the festival swallowed my voice. The crowd seemed to thicken around me, and that's when I realized how small I really was. Faces blurred together, and no one seemed familiar. That's when she appeared, a woman, maybe in her late 30s, with long dark hair pulled back into a messy ponytail. Came up to me. She was smiling, but something about the way her eyes looked didn't feel right. They were too wide and too eager. I didn't answer right away. My throat tightened, and I started to feel my chest constrict as if someone had wrapped a fist around my lungs. I looked around again, searching the sea of people, but my mum was gone. The crowd swallowed her whole. The woman's fingers brushed against my arm, just enough for me to feel the coldness of her skin. I stepped back, but she grabbed me. Her grip wasn't soft anymore. She held on tightly, fingers digging into my arm. Before I knew what was happening, she yanked me towards the edge of the festival grounds. I didn't even have time to scream. The sounds of the festival, the music, the laughter grew distant as she dragged me through the crowd. My feet scrambled to keep up, but her grip on me was unyielding. I tried pulling away, but her fingers only tightened. My mind went blank, all my thoughts wiped away by raw, animal instinct that screamed at me to run. We'd broken free from the crowd, the lights from the festival now a soft glow in the distance. That's when I saw it. Parked just beyond the last row of booths was a van, its engine idling, headlights dim. There was a man behind the wheel, staring straight at us. He was grinning, and the passenger door was already open. My whole body felt numb as the woman kept pulling me toward the van, her pace quickening. My feet barely touched the ground, my shoes dragging through the dirt. The man in the van never stopped smiling, his face illuminated by the dashboard lights. There was something on the seat next to him. Rope. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might tear itself apart. I knew what was going to happen if I got into that van. I didn't know how I knew, but I did. Every part of my body screamed at me to run, to fight, to do something, anything, but I couldn't. My limbs felt like lead, heavy and useless. We were just steps away from the van when everything seemed to slow down. I heard footsteps, loud and urgent, coming from behind me. Someone was shouting, but it was loud, distant, like I was underwater. The woman froze, her hands still locked around my arm. I could feel her fingers tremble as she hesitated. Then, suddenly, the weight on my arm vanished. I was yanked backward, away from her, away from the van, and I fell to the ground. The next few minutes were a blur.
Flashing lights, shouting voices, and rough hands pulling the woman away.
I saw her face as they took her, contorted with anger, eyes wild. She was screaming something, but I couldn't make out the words. All I could do was sit there, watching her disappear into the crowd. The van peeled away, its tires screeching on the pavement, but it didn't get far. More flashing lights, more shouting. They caught him too. I don't remember much after that, just the feeling of my mum's arms around me, holding me tight. I was shaking, but she didn't let go. Not until I finally stopped crying. Even now, as an adult, I can still feel that woman's grip on my arm, her nails biting into my skin. And I can still see that van in my nightmares, the way the man behind the wheel smiled at me, like I was already his. I don't go to fall festivals anymore. I can't. Not after that night. It was the perfect fall day, crisp air, the sky clear blue, and the leaves blazing in colours. Me and my girlfriend Kelly were headed to the local apple orchard, a spot that I had visited every year to pick apples for my mum's famous pies. Today, though, felt a little off. The orchard was nearly empty. The parking lot, usually packed, had only one old beat-up truck parked far away. I didn't let it bother me though, and we headed towards the trees with our basket. The orchard looked beautiful, but the silence was strange. We walked amongst the rows of apple trees, picking fruit and talking about how great the pie would be. But then I heard it, a whisper, barely audible, saying my name. I turned around, expecting to see someone, but there was no one in sight. I told myself it was probably just the wind, but the whispers kept coming, more frequently. Every time I heard my name, it was clearer and more urgent, like someone was right behind me. I tried to ignore it and focused on the apples. but the eerie feeling just wouldn't go away. Kelly suddenly stopped and stared at something in the distance. I looked and saw her, an old woman standing at the end of the row, her back hunched and her face hidden under a dark hat. She was standing motionless, just staring at us. The sight was disturbing. Her presence felt completely out of place. We kept moving, but the creepy feeling only got worse. The whispers grew louder, now clearly calling our names, echoing around us. It felt like the shadows were getting darker, the air colder. I could almost feel eyes on us watching from the trees. Kelly squeezed my hand as we quickened our pace. The orchard, which had always been a familiar place, now seemed alien and threatening. We grabbed a few apples, not caring about the amount, and hurried to the car. The engine roared to life, and we sped away from the orchard. I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the old woman following us, but she was nowhere in sight. We made it home with just a few apples and a feeling of relief. I never went back to that orchard. Some places are better left alone.